What's up, y'all? I'm back with another video, and I wanted to continue the series that I've been doing, knowing the information metabolism elements by behavior, and just want to give some clear examples that you can track in real time of how things like NI and SE and TE, so on and so forth, how they actually show in people behaviorally. Obviously, all people can do all things and can exhibit all kinds of behavior. It doesn't mean that there's a necessary link between some behavior you perceive and their IMEs, necessarily. That's something that you should keep in mind. But today I wanted to talk about introverted intuition, time, and some common behaviors you can see with NI leads or strong NI users, or whether it's valued or unvalued, but strong is usually when you see, specifically valued and strong is when you can see it better. Obviously you can see it the most clear in a NI base, which would be an ILI or an IEI. So one behavior that you can track with an NI lead is a lack of physical activity in favor of mental rumination and thinking. So a lot of NI bases struggle with being physically active and engage with the concrete world, which you would expect if with them being a lead intuitor, right? They lead with intuition. Intuition is something that's abstract. It's not something tangible that you can touch. You can't touch time. You can perceive time. You can perceive events across time and trends within time, but you can't actually see or physically engage with time itself. And so necessarily, if you lead with an abstract element, then you're going to have a weak sensory element. So if you lead with an I, then your SE and SI will both be weak. Even if you have creative NI, like the LIE and the EIE, they're going to have weak sensation because they're not perceiving strongly things that are present. Their personality is predicated upon thinking about things over time as they how they evolve, how they change, the trajectory of where things are headed. They're thinking about time and possibility, right? So a lot of NI bases will be they can be lethargic, sometimes they can be lazy, because they're preoccupied with abstract thought. They're thinking about, if we get a little bit deeper into the nature of their thoughts, a lot of their thoughts are thinking about consequences for actions. Like very fundamentally, NI is thinking sequentially from one point in time all the way to the end point within that sequence. And so a lot of times they might think about what might happen or will happen if they take a certain action, right? So instead of actually doing something and acting in the moment, they're thinking about what will happen as a result of acting in that way, of doing that thing, of having a hard conversation with a person, of confronting a person, of any event that you can appeal to. An NI base is likely to think about the consequences of that event. They have a desire to get a certain job, to have a certain career, and they're thinking they're not moving towards, I just need to get into action. I need to go to the administration office and sign up for a class. I need to call this employer to build a relationship so that I can better my chances getting this job. They're not getting into tactical action. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking of the process of actions. Well, once I get to the administrative office, then I need to think about what I have to bring with me so that I'm prepared, right? NI is preparatory. It's very prepared focused in many cases. Mentally prepared rather than physically prepared, right? Oftentimes they might forget to bring the thing that they were intending on bringing, and they thought about the whole process of how this conversation at the administration office is going to unfold, and they actually forgot their paperwork, or they forgot whatever they needed, right? It's like they're disconnected from the physical world and would rather think about the processes within time rather than rather than just getting involved in doing things. I mean, very basically. Or likely they can also think about negative actions or decisions they've made in the past, or how things have unfolded in the past. If they made a bad decision 5 years ago, they might be still dwelling on that decision instead of moving past it and trying to correct themselves in the future. So that's one dang, sun coming in hot. That's one common behavior. Rumination, just constantly replaying things in their mind, decisions they've made. Again, like I said, negative decisions they might have made. And just kind of being stuck in that mental process. And obviously just doing something, literally anything, going to the gym, working out, having a conversation with someone, something that gets them out of their mind, this is true broadly about strong intuitive types of struggling to be connected to the physical world, the real world. So being able to do things, physical things, might help them actually act more instead of thinking more and overthinking and rethinking and rethinking. Which another behavior, this is a natural lead into another behavior, it's basically the same thing, but which can lead to analysis paralysis, of not knowing what decision to make, because you're fixated on the process of making a decision that you never actually make the decision. Like, for that kind of person, the answer is to not think more. The answer is to actually do something. Even if it's not the best decision, doing something is better than doing nothing, right? And for them, they're very, they obviously lead with an I, so it's not as if they struggle with the mental planning aspect of decision making. It's more of the executive aspect of decision making, actually doing the thing they set out to do. Another behavior is outcome focused, thinking long term towards a certain outcome that they have in mind. You can see them being stubborn about the path that they're on and the path that they want to be on. And if someone tries to give them basically extroverted intuition, possible ways something could turn out, they give them advice or give them a bunch of hypothetical things they could do, right? When you're talking about extroverted intuition, you're talking about coulds. They don't want to think of time in a non-linear way. They don't want to think about what they could do with their life or could do with this situation or that situation. They want to know what they will do or what will happen if they go down this path. So they can be sometimes stubborn about the trajectory of things, whether it pertains to their own life or someone else's. That probably doesn't matter as much. You're going to see, especially obviously within an NI base who has stubborn and inert, inflexible NI, they're not going to take your thought of what outcome will come about. They're not listening to you in that regard, right? They have their own fixed outcome that they're thinking of, and they're not really wanting to take any outside feedback because they're the ones that are actually thinking about the outcomes consistently. So that's another, that could be another conversation about what does it mean for a function to be inert. I think some part of that depends on the strength of the element, and also whether you value it or not. It makes sense that you'd be the most inflexible about the thing you care about the most, that you're actually paying attention to a lot, right? When people talk about unsolicited advice, I'm not saying that it works in this one-dimensional way, but it could be that someone's telling a person or giving them advice about something that they know very well, right? They're already paying attention to it. They've already decided in their mind or in their actions what they're going to do. And so that just gets into, again, what does it mean for a function to be inert, and how does it look different? It functions the same way, obviously, but yeah, so I digress. I don't want to go on a tangent. So we have rumination, we have analysis paralysis, we have stubborn outcome mindedness. I don't know, kind of get the point. I'm trying to think about what else. Those are very clear. I think those come up a lot with NI bases. There's different flavors of it, obviously, because there's two types that lead with intuition. And so it's going to be flavored by the creative and the demonstrative. But fundamentally, you will still see that with both of the types. I'm trying to think what else. I'm kind of coming up with this on the spot too, so give me a little grace if I'm not as quick to come up with something. But what else? Those are really big ones. I could probably go more into detail about the nature of the thought life for NI, and why they get into analysis paralysis, or what are they actually thinking about really when they are thinking about time. I mean, obviously, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's consequential. So they're not thinking about what could happen in a situation naturally. They reject that information or ignore it, right? Yeah, I mean, I basically said that. Sometimes they can be pessimistic and nihilistic, because if you're thinking about the consequences for things so much, it can be hard for you to find motivation to do anything. And you can kind of adopt a nihilistic attitude towards life, broadly speaking. What's the point for me to work up the corporate ladder if I'm trying to think like a NI lead. If I just come to realize that that money in and of itself is meaningless, wouldn't that desire to move up in the company also be meaningless, right? And this is that's just an example of how that might show. For an ILI, it might be more about whether something will work effectively or not, and thinking about, pragmatic solutions to problems, and thinking about if you adopt a certain method of action, whether or not it will pan out in the long run, and being pessimistic towards methods for problem solving, basically. That's basically how their pessimism might demonstrate itself. There's just a certain inevitability with NI leads that gives them that pessimistic attitude often, or cynical attitude. They might say stuff like, well, what's the point? What's the point? There's no point to this. This basically, it's meaningless. There's no point for me to act, because if I act, then these are all the consequences and issues that will pop up that I won't know how to control. And so it's better for me to not do anything, instead of, which you can hear the kind of two-dimensional SI in that. Like, it's better for me to not do anything, which would be SE, the doing. And so I'm just going to let things play out. That's kind of a SI thing. I'm just going to let things rest and hope that without my direct intervention, they will fall into place. Well, life does not really work that way. I mean, there are certain situations where it is wise to just stop and slow down. But there are other situations where your direct involvement is needed, and things won't go the direction you want them to go unless you actually change the present moment. You do something about it, basically. Because sometimes, I'm thinking more of an IEI, but this is still fundamentally true with the ILI, because they still lead with an I, and their suggestive is still SE. They might think that by going after what you want, actually taking concrete action, that it might jeopardize the outcome that they're focusing on. They might think it might contaminate it. They're like, well, this is like very crystallized in my mind, and if I go muck it up and get involved, I might be open to a different recourse of action. I might be open to a different way this could unfold, right? And that gets into extrovert intuition. It's like, obviously some of these dynamics that I'm talking about, I don't know if they have a structural basis for them, but I'm just kind of thinking about the interrelationship between elements and functions, and how one action in your brain might lead you to butt up against a certain IME that you have a resistance towards, right? And what I basically said, that makes sense to me, at least, of being like, okay, well, if I actually take concrete action in this moment, it might mess with the long-term outcome I have, which is an I, and it might lead me into different ways this situation could unfold, right? This could lead to a different possibility that I can't really account for, and I'm not really wanting to, because I value NI, I lead with it, right? That's the mind of the NI base. I have one trajectory that I'm looking at, and I don't want anything to prevent me from getting there, even though obviously the getting there implies action, which they're not great at, right? So so I don't know, I'm kind of thinking out of the box here with some of the dynamics, but I'm talking about it in this way a little bit just for the sake of clarifying things and making them a little bit more comprehensive. But yeah, so I'm trying to think what else. I mean, those are very chief behaviors. I think that's probably good enough. I mean, I can't really think of anything else, and I don't want to make this unnecessarily long. So yeah, I hope that helps. Let me know what you guys think. Obviously, from an NI lead, you should drop down what, you know, how you relate to this, like this content, this information. I know obviously there's probably some things I'm missing because I don't value, or I don't lead with NI, and so that would make sense. But yeah, so that's all I really have. Peace.